and I'm here with some badass people. Holy shnikes, guys. Holy shnikes. Okay. One of our guests of honor, Witney over here. What's up, Witney?
Oh, God bless. Good to see you. Thank you. Please don't describe me as badass. It's not a good word for me.
I think it is. I definitely think it is. The debonair, the badass, all around most handsome, the beauty himself, for sure.
Here I am. Thank you for having me. It is an extreme honor, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, for sure. And we have one of our recent winners of Schmoebates. What's up, Chance?
How you doing? Yeah, I've been on this channel so many times, might as well be on staff now. But yes, I'm here, and I'm happy to not be fighting this time, so I'm happy to judge.
That's true. You haven't been a judge on here before, so that's going to make it pretty interesting. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Schmoebates. It is a Schmoedown based arguments debate show where we definitely argue all like the big questions regarding Schmoedown, regarding the best competitors of all time, who should be on Rushmore, who would be the best competitor to go on a Schmoedown theme road trip with, or even what Schmoedown personality would be the best in a food fight. That's fair.
Are those the questions we're fighting today? I want to fight those questions.
Yeah, those were definitely some of my favorite questions, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so we have some competitors we're gonna bring on board here in a hot second. Our first competitor, debater really, is the beautiful, the glorious of the Action Army itself, Miss Danie Joy.
What's up, y'all? I am super pumped to be on Schmoebates. This is technically my Schmoebates debut, and I am pumped and ready.
Yes, it's no pressure, but if you don't win this, we're gonna have to kick you out of the call to action. So,
no pressure.
No pressure.
That's the way
so what's the prize? Do you get like 10,000 in cash, or is there like luggage or a trip to Hawaii or something? Who wins?
Only $1 billion, and mention from Harloff saying, "Cool guy." I respect that opinion. That's enough.
That's no small thing.
That is for sure, especially. Now, our next competitor, we have, oh my gosh, one of the most popular fans around when it comes to Schmoedown, especially from the rock stars, Mr. Garth McMurray. What's up, Garth? All around. Yes, even a longtime viewer of C2A all around, but you've never actually, competed or debated on here before. Are you excited?
Yeah, very much. I'm usually active in the chat and stuff, but I've never been on camera with you guys, so it's great.
Well, first for everything, and no pressure. But just like how we said with Danie, we're going to have to kick you out of the chat indefinitely if you don't win this. So there's a lot of pressure going all around. It's going to be an argument to the blood, to the death.
Yeah.
It's going to be real fun.
To the death.
All right. So since we're kind of pre-recording this, as you notice, we have 3 judges today, Chance, Witney, and I, along with the 2 competitors. We are going to be judging them specifically. We're not going to have an audience vote like we usually do, since it's like kind of at a weird time. So we are going to be, Chance, Witney, and I are actually going to be right out judging them, who we think wins that argument for that question. We're going to start out with 60 seconds for an opening statement, and then 4 minutes 4 minutes of open debate between the competitors. Then finally 1 minute of a closing statement from each of the competitor. And we're going to have 3 questions today. So we are definitely going to have a walk away from this with a winner and a loser. Y'all ready?
Ready.
Anticipation is building, guys. Okay, so as we kind of mentioned before, Garth, you actually provided your answers first in our little chat thing for Schmoebates chat, and so you have to provide your answers first, your opening statement and everything first for the first question. So please, Witney, please do the honor of reading our first question today.
Indeed. Okay, here it goes. You ready? Are you psyched? Are you pumped? All right.
I am.
What is the greatest rivalry in Schmoedown history?
And for me, I chose Kalinowski versus Cushing. I picked them because I really love that I'm usually rooting against Kalinowski and KO versus Rachel Cushing. But no matter who wins, I'm happy. When Kalinowski wins, I'm actually, stirred with emotions. And I think these two have had many battles. They've had 5 battles in regular and 1 in exhibition, and they've all been amazing. And I just love the two of them fighting off against each other. And you see the emotion and the love where they often hug each other at the end of certain matches. And so there's a great camaraderie between the two of them, even though they're bitter enemies. How much time do I have?
15 seconds.
Okay. And so that's why I chose them, is they're my 2 favorites, because I can root against one, but I'm still happy when he wins.
5.
And that's it.
All right, fantastic. So you guys you pose a very popular rivalry overall, for sure. Chance, you two are Chance and Witney, you both have been part of very well-known teams. So fantastic teams for sure. What do you guys think of this selection of KO versus Cushing?
Well, Rachel Cushing is I would say if the whole Schmoedown has a star player, she's at least in the top 3. So any rivalry she has is kind of doomed from the start, because kind of she's gonna win it. However, I like what you said. There's sort of a lot of matches in the Schmoedown. We're bitter enemies on camera, but at the end of the match, we usually respect somebody who plays very well, whether or not they slaughtered us, which has happened to me a lot. So I think that is a very strong selection for sure. It's a very popular selection. It's like maybe selecting Citizen Kane as the best movie of all time. Can't argue it's obvious, but that is a selection I respect, and probably one I would have come up with myself.
Gotcha. Okay, so overall likable characters all around, maybe potentially too obvious. Okay, and so going over to you, Danie, you have 60 seconds on the clock to make your selection of the greatest rivalry in Schmoedown history. Go.
All right, so you all might be saying that is the most obvious, but mine is very clearly the most obvious of the two, and that is Team Action versus Top 10. That is the greatest rivalry in Schmoedown history, and I think every single person knows that. Not only has this rivalry given us amazing storylines, those storylines have continued outside of their matches. It also kind of helped Rocha turn face just a little bit. Like, he's not a full face, but having that rivalry with Andrew Ghai has allowed him to step his game up a little bit more and have those guys step their game up as well. It also created one of the best fan rivalries.
15 seconds.
Fan rivalries inside of the community as well. So for Team Action versus Top 10 is absolutely one of the biggest rivalries in Schmoedown history, because it's
2 and done. Thank you so much for that very passionate argument on behalf of the Action Army everywhere. Chance, I saw you take some notes. What do you think?
Not one that I would have thought of, but I do like the pick. I like some of the points she brought up, and I'm curious to see her expand on some of these and combat Garth in his pick of Kalinowski versus Cushing, which I do appreciate Garth trying to play the judge. So, I'm ready to see where this goes.
Absolutely. It's we have 2 very popular picks overall, and Witney and Chance, I don't know about you, but I'm gonna be actively trying not to assume that I'm gonna vote in favor of Danie, just because I am an Action Army member, obviously. Action Army right there. So personal biases aside, I'm excited to see how they debate today. All right. So you guys got 4 minutes on the clock to start arguing. Go.
All right. So first of all, the question is, what is the greatest rivalry in Schmoedown history? When you think of rivals, these are people who are going to always be against each other. We saw this my pick continue outside of it. Garth, you said that no matter who wins, you're happy. that the two of them love each other, and that is something that you have to think about when you're thinking about rivals, because we only know that because we know these people, but we've seen Team Action and Top 10 go against each other all of the time. So it was a continued rivalry. I'm gonna let you talk just a little bit.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing: is your continued rivalry is mostly in other places, on Twitter and Facebook
exactly.
and all that. And as for matches, they only played 2, and it was within 3 months. With Kalinowski and Cushing, it's been over 2 years. It's been 6 matches. It's gone on a long time.
Well, so has this rivalry. It extends out to Team Action versus Top 10. It extends to the fan communities. It extends to John Roca himself and Andrew Ghai, with that whole little fun thing where Roca was Andrew's long lost dad and stuff like that. It created these really fun aspects to the entire game. So yeah, having it travel over to the Facebook pages, to Twitter, watching those Twitter responses and rivalries back and forth with each other extends the game. Rachel and Mike, watching them go against each other is like watching your siblings fight with each other. You're too close to them in a certain way that you care about who comes out of this. Where with Team Action or Top 10, depending on what faction you're a fan of, you want to see that other person lose, and that's what a rivalry is.
Well,
can you guys go a little into depth about how fans reacted to some of these rivalries? A little bit within the fan base, social media, just direct reaction right after some of these massive matches.
Well, for my 2, obviously, there's a big love for the both of them. Especially seen at the live event at San Diego Comic-Con last year, where it was this huge event in front of a big live audience. It was one of Rachel's last matches before retiring. And it was this big emotional thing, and it was a very close battle, back and forth. And Mike pulls out the win and gets all emotional.
But what does that have to do with being rivals? Because that just makes them seem like friends. And even during that match, you saw the love that they have for each other. You even said it before. Even after their matches, they're going and they're hugging against each other. The only hug that Roca got from Andrew Ghai was when he tackled it. So that rivalry and how the fans reacted, Alex, to answer your question. Action Army still has a huge presence, and Action Army is.
1 minute remaining.
I'm sorry?
Oh, 1 minute remaining.
And Action Army has been known to have this rivalry, and that just extends it. Like, I keep saying that word.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is that yours is pure animosity in the case of Roca, where in fact he's been insulted and or tried insulting, and it's gotten a little too far sometimes. And the thing I like about the Kalinowski Cushing is Kalinowski will go after people online and stuff, and him and Rachel, but they still have this, like you said, brother and sister. And I actually like that, because I had an older sister, and we would fight and argue all the time, and I saw that kind of a competition and trying to get one up on each other. And
Team Action and Top 10 still have a rivalry till this day. You said it was only for a little bit, but it still extends. It's still there. It's still underneath.
3,
It's still a rivalry going on.
1 and done. Oh my gosh. Are you guys like out of breath? I can see some steam going on both ends here.
I feel like you need to lean up against the ropes and get like the squirt bottle in the mouth, blotting your forehead.
Exactly. That is very rivalry focused for sure. Witney, what do you think of seeing your first argument here?
Golly, that was intense. I didn't expect so much vitriol. These are all points that I've sort of vaguely considered in the past, but actually hearing them spoken aloud is really calling a lot of these sort of rivalries or matches into starker relief. You guys both make excellent points, you see.
Well, I mean, it's like they still have to make their closing statements. Is there any particular point that if you want them to expand on to really solidify, a final assessment, or do you feel like there's any holes you really want them to kind of fill, essentially, that you want them to expand on?
Well, the word here is rivalry, and I think we need to perhaps zero in on sort of the definition of that, because I think you guys are both coming at what a rivalry is from slightly different definitions.
Okay, so a rivalry would have to be a competition for the same objective or for the superiority in the same field. So, with that said, it could be towards a belt, it could be towards a certain faction, whatever it may be. So,
what, however, is like, what denotes a good rivalry? Like, what qualities are you seeking for in a good rivalry?
Can I speak to this?
Well, you're definitely going to be able to have time to address their questions. Chance, do you have anything that you kind of want them to answer in their closing statement?
I do want to hear Garth combat why Cushing and Kalinowski feel more like rivals rather than, like Danie said, like watching siblings fights. At the same time, Danie, I want to hear why, even though there's been less matches, why Action vs. Top 10 is a better rivalry, even though there were less matches.
Yeah, I know you said that, Garth, you made an excellent point, time-wise. They haven't had nearly as matches. Cushing and KO have gone up against each other pretty consistently in IG as well as like in teams and singles for the past several years versus Team Action versus Top 10. They only had a few matches, 2 very memorable matches, but only 2 matches nonetheless. So please do expand on that. Okay, now, starting with you, Garth, on your closing statement, you do have 60 seconds. You ready?
Yep.
All right, go.
All right. Well, here's my thing about this rivalry is, even though it may be more brother and sister and they're not having fights on Twitter and all that, that's not really Rachel's style. They pushed each other to be better. They were both like the best in IG and singles and teams, and they were fighting, and Mike was really got in on his studying, and he'd post photos of like, I'm studying while I'm on vacation, and Rachel was always studying and getting better and better, and you could see it in their game. They just improved and improved. Meanwhile, Roca and Ghai, it was mostly this online battle and this rivalry off screen more than on screen, and it, like I said, only 2 matches within 3 months in 2017. Meanwhile, Rachel and Mike have been going to battle for 2 years.
3, 2, 1, and done. All right. Some solid, points made for sure. Danie, so you do have some time to really kind of think on this for sure. You ready for the 60 seconds?
I am. Let's do this.
Go.
All right. So why, with less matches, is this a bigger rivalry than what Rachel and Mike are? Is the fact that people are still talking about it to this day. There's still times where people bring up this pocket of what happened in the Schmoedown, and it also raised the character aspect of the game, because it allowed competitors to up their character game just a little bit. So not only is this one of the best rivalries inside of the Schmoedown, it elevated the game in a different sort of way. So it allowed a lot of people to really come into their character and embrace it and have the interaction with the fans and with other competitors and stuff like that. So the fact that we're still talking about it to this day, you can find it on the internet, and maybe it's more for me because I'm Action Army focused, but that rivalry is still prevalent to this day, and that's why it is the greatest rivalry in Schmoedown history.
3, 2, and 1. You guys want to take a breather? You feeling okay?
I'm good.
Get that water, bro. Against the rope. Got a coach in the corner. Witney, Chance, what'd you guys think? Did they address your questions?
They did indeed. What I'm hearing here is, I think Garth is arguing quality, whereas Danie is arguing breadth, and I think those are both important points to make. I do have to balance in my head which of those constitutes greatest rivalry? Is it the one where, like Garth said, where the two competitors are arguing to make each other better? We're seeing two essentially, it's King Kong and Godzilla fighting against each other. It's like you can't really root for a winner, but you want to see the fight. Danie, meanwhile, is talking about this broader community of what the Schmoedown has come to represent, and how there's a lot of fan communities out there. There's a lot of extra, a super narrative, if you were, sort of like a meta text that is being, additionally to the actual matches that we see on screen. And there's no rule and no word in the question that says it's necessarily an on-screen rivalry. This could be a rivalry that maybe they haven't even played a match for a couple years, but if they're continuing the rivalry in sort of ancillary ways, that also counts, I would say. So
sure. There's all, I mean, even
that's
if
what
you
I'm
see
seeing.
them on screen together, there is a little bit of tension there, a little bit. There is that back and forth between the characters, for sure. Well, Chance, do you have any? What do you think of their closing statements and like debates overall?
The closing statements are really mostly was going to sway me this one, because I was going one way for the whole argument, and then I heard stuff in the closing argument that made me a little less sure of which direction I was going. But well fought fight between the two of them.
Okay. Well, who do you guys? Okay, do you guys have a solid answer? Who? Okay. Voting today, voting right now, who do you feel like made the better argument for the greatest rivalry in Schmoedown history? Is it Danie with top 10 versus team action, or is it Garth with Cushing versus K.O. Kalinowski?
Apologies, Garth, but I think Danie has made some interesting points here.
Okay.
So I'm going to side with Danie on this one. This is nothing against you personally.
Nope.
I think
that's the whole point of this is someone's got to win.
Yeah, I understand though that she did make this excellent point that going off the screen and continuing the rivalry in this like sort of larger context is actually something that can make a rivalry far more exciting if you're in those circles and paying attention.
And what about you, Chance?
See, Danie would have won this point for me like wholehandedly if she had said, she brought the fact that Roka did take on both members of action singles, and when to combat the whole, they only had 2 matches within 3 months. She could have combated that with the fact that Roka played both of them. I do like the point that Garth brought up that they have that Rachel Cushing and Kalinowski get the history. They push each other to be better. At the same time, though, Danie did get more hits on Garth than Garth got on Danie, so because of that, this is closer than it was going to be before closing. I gotta go with Danie.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I mean, that settles it in that case. Witney and Chance, they both say Danie won this round, so well done there. Okay, so now we're going to be going on to our second question. Okay, so Chance, you're going to be reading this one. Okay, and the question is...
It's revealed to me because I don't even know the question. What rule would you want to introduce to use during Schmoedown matches? Ooh, what rule?
Well, I was talking to Lucas about it the other day. I'm like, and watching the Brooklyn matches, it was such a prime example of how important strategy is now with so many these really higher level competitors, with these all these new rookies as well, and also Ben and Bibbs, whipping out those challenges like nobody's business, really shows how important these new rules are specifically. So with that being said, expansion of more competitors and all that good stuff, maybe some new rules. Let's expand on that. Okay, so last time we did have Garth do the start off with our opening and closing statement. So this time it's going to be you, Danie, with your opening statement. Okay. You ready?
I am.
You got 1 minute on the clock and go.
All right. So introducing something to a rule that is already in place is instead of keeping your challenge when you use a challenge, you lose your challenge. You get one challenge throughout the entire match. You do not get to keep it if you win that. So we saw in Brooklyn, like what Alex said, how those challenges were utilized and how you can use them in your gameplay. Sometimes you can take advantage of those challenges, like we saw in Brooklyn. Spoilers, everyone, sorry. It allows players to brush up on their strategy, to think about where they're challenging instead of just going about challenging willy-nilly and just trying to use it to mess up a player's head. So it takes that element into it. It allows the game to move forward a little bit more instead of having to
5 seconds.
Everyone off from anything. There we go. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just flicked off the air. Sorry, not to review. I was just numbering it. I didn't even realize. I just totally flipped it off. Okay, so no matter what I just want to clarify, Danie, is that your the rule that you would introduce into Schmoedown would be to, even if you win or lose your challenge, that's it. Essentially, you're done with the challenges.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And Garth, what would your rule be? Introduction be?
Does my time start now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My new rule that I would implement would be that spelling counts on whiteboards. This is going to be a controversial one. I know that some people have written out answers, and sometimes it's not quite, they'll say one thing, and then you look at the writing, and it's that doesn't look like what they said. And so writing clearly and writing out the proper answer. People will have to learn how to spell Schwarzenegger and things like that. But for the most part, I think too many times people will say an answer, but you'll look at what they wrote, and it's not always spelled right or in context it needs to be right, so that there's no question that what they thought up was what they wrote down, and it comes into play with how they answer the question and the time allotted, and the spelling is an important part of that, I think.
And done. Okay, this is a really tough one. Okay, well, you guys are competitors. Witney, Chance, you guys are competitors on some amazing teams. You're both amazing singles players, as well as team players. What do you guys think? What would you guys think about possibly playing with these rules if needed?
I don't like either of these rules. No, I think both of these rules are. I don't think either of these rules are very good. As someone who, as a fan of sports and someone who can't write clearly to save his life, and sometimes can't spell to save his life, one of you's gonna have to sell me on why your rule is good. So that's what I'm at with this one.
Well,
that's rough. That's gonna be definitely a learning curve. And what about you, Witney?
One of these rules I think is completely legit, and the other one is wouldn't present itself as being a bad idea until you're in the trenches, as it were. There comes a time when even the game itself is wrong, and you have to challenge the person asking the question. If you are confident enough in your knowledge of movie trivia, I think you should be able to challenge multiple times. I remember one of the first Schmoedown events. I wasn't even on it. I was just attending it. I was watching for the first time. Mm-hmm. And the category, it came up on the wheel. The category was films of the 1970s, and they proceeded to ask a question about Dr. Strangelove, which came out in 1964. Yeah. Or so. They had to stop the game. Even the people watching wanted to challenge the game at that point. And I think using a finite chit isn't quite practical for essentially the jerks and assholes who want to be right about everything. And what is the game if not being kind of a jerk in the boat, just so you can make a point?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you do have to be immensely knowledgeable, obviously, to about movies in general, going into this. But to be on that kind of level where you're thinking to yourself, well, I know some of the main actors, I know the director and everything, but at the same time, you have to go into hardcore on plot specifics as well as like the year released. I mean, there's so many smaller details you really have to be involved with for sure. Yeah, but okay, now you have you do have two competitors with you here that you have to argue, make them believe that they would actually be okay with having your rule on board. And it sounds like either way, they're like, fuck those rules.
Mhm.
So you got quite a bit of convincing to do. All right. Are you guys ready for your open debate?
All right.
Yes.
Okay, you got 4 minutes on the clock. Let's go.
Okay, last time you were talking way more than me, so this time I'm going to start. Now, as for mine, spelling, I just want to make sure people are correct and get the right answers and clarify what they're saying. With yours, if someone makes a legit challenge, like let's say for instance, Video Drew, where she said that's not a horror, that's a thriller, that kind of what's it classified under, something like that, where you're correcting what they're asking, or they might say something wrong about the year or whatever. If someone loses a challenge because of just correcting something that's wrong because then later they don't have a challenge anymore. Mm-hmm. Challenges are very important to the game, and that they're there for a reason.
Challenges have been changing in the game recently. We've seen it in these couple of last few matches where people are throwing out challenges to create a distraction into the game and to get into other players' heads and stuff like that. So when you use a challenge in the same way that you two were talking about what Witney said and what you just said about utilizing that challenge in a specific thing where it's about gameplay, that's what makes it important. That's why having only one challenge is important to that game, because it allows less time for people or less it doesn't let people use those challenges in a non-important way. That's why all of you are making great points about why the challenge rule is important. And that's why if you use it only once, you have to think about when you use it, and you have to know when you're going to use it instead of trying to use it to mess the game up.
The problem with that is that then you're penalizing the people who are using it for good reasons versus the people who are using it just to rattle people.
Well, the same thing with the spelling rule. If you use having someone study that much more, putting that much more weight on competitors to have to learn how to spell is a lot of pressure to put on someone. It's a little bit more pressure than deciding when to use a challenge. Right. They've already changed whiteboard rules enough to where now, like the thing, you have to put the thing. That's already important. The whole wrestle debate, it was a big deal inside of the Schmoedown. So punctuation is also something that matters. So to add spelling onto that is just a little bit more tough than just utilizing your challenges as a game strategy. So it puts more pressure on the player in that situation where they have to spell instead of trying to use a challenge strategically. So I just feel like it's unfair to competitors to force them into this sort of a spelling bee, basically, which people study for so much.
Well, the reason I wanted to incorporate spelling is to make sure that the answers are clear, because for instance, Kalinowski versus Cushing, the Ninko versus Ninka, where it was just one letter off, and he did say Ninko, but if he said Ninka but then it said Ninko on the board,
they already have that rule though. It's the first person, when the first person puts up their board, if they pronounce it right and it's spelled wrong, then that allows it, because that's
what I'm saying is incorrect, because they wrote it down wrong and they had more time to think, oh no, it's not Ninko, it's Ninka.
No, that's the opposite. So if you and I are competing and I wrote it down wrong, but I pronounce it first and I go first, and you wrote it down wrong and you wrote it down wrong, you don't get that. You don't get to be right because you heard me say it first. Does that make sense?
Well, what I'm saying is that the spoken answer should match what's written down. And that's where
it does. They already have that rule whenever it's the first person talking. If you utilize your challenges correctly and you think about it strategically, it allows the game to move forward.
And done. Woo! It's okay. There was like raised a little bit. There was like some dodges and punches. Holy fuck.
That one was fun.
Like I was like, I'm not gonna lie, that was like pretty solid. That was like that's actually so far one of my favorite debates that I've seen. And I kept going back and forth. Chance specifically, I mean, you've been in a handful of matches where spelling was a huge part of winning and losing. So tell me, what did you think of specifically of some of his arguments?
Okay, I understand a lot of the points Garth is making, and I don't want to give me edge because Danie just has to say one thing in order to get me on her side. Right now,
we still have our closing statements. Just saying.
I know. That's right. If she brings up in closing, then she'll take this from me. But as of right now, I'm leaning heavily towards one way.
All right.
No
okay. Is there anything that Garth could say in particular that would make you feel much more confident in his rule being added versus Danie?
Are you talking to Witney or me?
Oh, sorry, you. So.
Yeah. There are points that can be made to solidify either argument. Although it's like a very like brief statement. I kind of don't want to give it away. I kind of want them to get to themselves. I'm not gonna help you out.
No pressure, guys. No pressure. All right, and Witney, and you're in a very similar situation where, you've been in matches where challenges have been a huge aspect of, both winning and losing some of those matches, and comes down to those like really small details. What did you think of her arguments made?
Well, what I'm getting here is both Danie and Garth are sort of coming at the matches as if they're producers. And Danie is making the argument that she wants a cleaner match. She wants the match to go ahead with out all of this sort of distraction. She wants to just get to the next round, prove your mettle, win by answering questions. Whereas Garth is making the argument that he wants sort of a purer match. He wants things to be a little bit more exact. He wants people to be really studied. He's trying to sort of cut out the sloppiness. And I find that this may be affecting sort of all of your answers because you seem to be viewing the Schmoedown from these slightly different angles. And if you were perhaps producing the shows, then that's sort of rules that you would be able to incorporate yourselves. I am leaning heavily in one direction, and I'll explain why in a moment, but I'll let you make your closing arguments first.
Well, I must say I'm excited for them to kind of go into a little bit. Garth, there is Garth and Danie, there are just a few questions I do want you to address. Garth, obviously we have so many international directors and producers and just content makers overall. Could you I am kind of interested, like Guillermo del Toro, for example, Bong Joon-ho, all these really great filmmakers. I'm curious if how that applies to some of these more international creators, how that still applies, or if not, if we ever go into that foreign film slice at all, how that would apply, but also in pronunciation. And Danie, I kind of want you to kind of go into a little bit more specifically how by using those, you talk about using a positive potential extraction and more gameplay. Can you kind of go a little more in depth about how most more recent matches require that kind of sabotage, I guess, when it comes to using these challenges and how some competitors are using them to their benefit, or maybe not using them correctly or efficiently, essentially. Okay, but you guys have 60 seconds, again, starting with you, Danie. Got 1 minute on the clock for your closing statement, and go.
Okay, so utilizing the challenge rule to your benefit as a player when trying to trip someone up in gameplay, like what Ben Bateman has been doing lately. He's been doing that in most of his matches. Sometimes that just allows other people to just kind of think a little bit more on it and try to figure that out. And I just really believe that if you have one chance to make a good challenge, you're going to bring it up whenever you feel it's important and whenever you feel the need to do it.
You ever had one shot, one opportunity.
Yes, don't lose this chance to look. But also when to talk about Garth's rule really quickly, it's just, in my personal opinion, it's unfair to give that pressure to players, where mine is just gives you a different sort of strategy to the game. That is just allowing a little bit a different type of
1 and done.
Sorry, Danie, I didn't mean to interrupt. I want to apologize there.
It's okay, don't worry about it.
Just making a dumb joke.
If anything, Danie was like, he's speaking to me. His voice. What? All right, and Garth, like I mentioned, please address my questions, because that's something I was really curious about when I heard your question in particular.
Okay.
But yeah, you have 60 seconds on the clock. Are you ready? Emotionally, physically, ready to go? All right, you have 1 minute starting now.
All right. So regarding the foreign directors and things like that, you already have some actors and actresses who are foreign and or have foreign names like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I realize it's controversial to say, oh, you got to spell Schwarzenegger right. But people already study and go to Wiki and IMDb and all that to get all the directors and composers and writers and all the various actors. So when they're making their notes and
30
stuff,
seconds.
they can note down the names. As I brought up before with Kalinowski and the Ninka thing, he admitted he wrote it down wrong in his study book. So things like that will get people to focus more and get the proper answer right. And as for the challenges, I think that the challenges rule should remain as it is, because like I said, there are legit challenges. They're not just to rattle opponents. They're not just to make a spectacle.
3,
They're important to the game, and challenges should
1. Okay. All right. So we're going to be going into our third and final question shortly. Chance, what did you think of these arguments?
I still don't like either of these rules. Pretty bad.
Worse. I don't want them.
This was a tough question to answer. Also, when Alex gave us this question, I was just like, "Oh."
And also, you guys were wrong. The correct answer is, just like any sport, is to have an official pause time. If either one of it, just like in baseball or football or whatever it may be, you can have that official pause time and be like, hey, I need 60 seconds just to go to the bathroom or get out with my manager or whatever it may be. You need that movement every once in a while. We're human. But that should have been the correct answer, guys. So
correct answer. Correct answer. Phone friends.
Yeah. I should have been something like, they get free massages or.
Yeah, we should have been more player focused.
or phone your faction. That could be it.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
They had that in Schmoes nowadays. They had phone a Schmo or ask a Schmo.
Ask a Schmo. Yeah, bring back ask a Schmo. But you can only call people in your faction, and
or
you have
in
to pick which one you're calling.
Just go to the audience poll.
I was trying to think of
suddenly you have all of they would actually be voting specifically because of that. They're like, well, this person is asking. We're gonna sabotage the votes. I could see that happening if that were the case.
Oh god, that'd be terrible. That's true. That could happen also. Great.
And Whitney, what did you think of their argument?
You guys are making some excellent points here. I'm hearing that you both sort of seem to be watching the matches in different sorts of ways, and one of you is valuing teamsmanship and gamesmanship, and the other one is valuing pure knowledge. And those are both really important elements of this game. You have to have people who do have a lot of pure knowledge, and you have to have a lot of people who know how to play the game in a smart, entertaining sort of way, right? Mm-hmm. And there's parts of me that enjoy both of those things and want to play as both of those things. But at the end of the day, I'm a nerd and I'm a stickler, and I think spelling ought to count. I think if you're studying film, just like Garth said, if you're studying film and you're actually going online and you're reading the cards and you're trying to figure out all of these facts, then you should probably know how to spell Koyanis Kotze, or you should know the full title of Dr. Strangelove. Mm-hmm. You should be able to write all of that stuff down. And if you are writing down, and like you mentioned, some filmmakers or actors might have names from other countries where they spell out surnames a little bit differently. Do you write down Park Chan-wook or you write down Chan-wook Park? Turns out those are both acceptable, and you should know that. So I think using a sort of a challenge rule in order to trip someone up, or in order to slow the game down, or in order to just sort of psych somebody out, I think that's acceptable. I think that should be allowed. Sort of psyching out your opponent is actually a good way to play the game. And although that may be a little bit frustrating to the viewer who just wants to kind of get on with it, I think when you're in the hot seat, as it were, and you're really trying to get under the player's skin and trying to remember things and get them a little bit distracted, challenging something really tiny is, I think, a completely fair tactic. So...
Sorry, Lord. What?
I completely agree with what he just said. I was totally waiting for Garth to use that argument against me. I really genuinely do love whenever players use that strategy. So I was waiting for Garth.
Witney, who do you think should win this argument?
I'm on Garth's side. I think he made an excellent point, and I think he actually has a better point to make.
Okay, Chance.
He did a good job too.
Solid argument for sure. And Chance, what did you think?
Just to be clear, is penmanship a part of Garth's game, or a part of his arguments, or spelling?
I think he did say that. He said you have to write clearly. No Jane Fonda situations here.
Okay, then Danie, because I write like a doctor. So no, I'm kidding. There are a few ways Garth could have sealed this for me. If he said, Witney said, if he had said either, there are very rare instances when you get something like super hard to spell, and I could hear like a Hilda Goodnaughter in round one. Or if he said that, there's already a term for like not using, there's already a term for using challenges, for using challenges. It's the use JTE. He would have sealed this away. However, there was one thing I was waiting to hear from Danie that she never said, and that's the fact that if the only difference between the only doubt comes with the whiteboard, and if the whiteboard wasn't there, there would be no question of your knowledge, which is what helped me with the David O. Russell thing. Like, there was no question that I knew David O. Russell directed Three Kings. Only difference is I never seen it spelled out. I hadn't seen it spelled out that many times. So if Danie had brought that up, she would have won for me. But the fact she didn't, even though I hate his rule more, I gotta give it to Garth.
Holy shnikes. Okay.
Wait, what was the did somebody do David O apostrophe Russell?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. That was
an
me.
Irish man.
Yeah, it was founding.
I would have voted that down because his name is not O. Russell.
Yeah,
but it is a Russell. And what is the matter? I know it's David O. Russell.
Afterwards was furious.
Roka was super pissed. No one was retired. So.
Yeah, it was a wonderful match. I remember watching it and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. However, I could see both arguments and I was just like, oh, this hurts to watch. Like, I don't know. Because I both love both teams so much. I mean, like, being fans, all around. Okay, so congratulations, Garth. You just won your second argument.
Thank you. And I just want to say, in the fan leagues, they are stricter about it. When I play,
it's funny. In one of Christian actually pointed it out to me. I had a fan league match where I had the same answer, wrote the exact same way, and no one called me on it, which is why it kind of like stuck in my brain. Oh, this is the right way. This is the correct way to write that. Yeah,
it's just so easily arguable. That's for sure. Okay. So we are going to be going to our third and final question. This is going to be our final questions to determine who is going to be the winner for today's Schmoebate. Is it going to be Danie of the Action Army, or is it going to be Garth of Rock Stars repping the crew? And Witney and Chance, this is it. We're going to determine who wins today. Are you guys ready for like the biggest Schmoebate of all time?
Oh God, my heart is in my throat. This is so pressure.
If your blood pressure is not like raised exponentially, I'll be very disappointed.
Oh, gosh, I'm a middle-aged man. I'm just gonna if I keel over on camera, just broadcast it. If it's really embarrassing, broadcast it even further.
And like, I'm gonna post it right away so I can get like a bazillion views. No, I'm just kidding.
Make a meme if I die. So.
The fight that killed Witney Seibold.
Use my death to get as many hits as possible. That's all I have.
And if I die, please make a funny GIF to share.
A little caption: fail.
That's how we feel as
wasted.
Die bait.
It is indeed how we heal ourselves for sure after matches and everything. All right. Okay. So for our third and final question, going back to you, Witney, and for this one particularly, you know what? I'm gonna be flipping my team action coin. I got my team action coin, my Patreon one. Okay. So Danie, I assume you're gonna be a team Ghai.
I'm team Ghai.
Of course, you're team Ghai, obviously. So this one has both Team Ghai as well as Team Bateman on it. Check that out. So
Team Trader.
It lands face up on your the competitor of choice. I assume Garth, you're going to be Bateman for this one.
Well, I already got Ghai, so I guess I'm Team Trader. Right.
Always Team Trader, forever Team Trader. That will determine who is going to make who's going to start off with the opening and closing statements as well. Okay, so it's going to be Ghai or Bateman. Oh, that was loud. Sorry.
Happy loud.
Let it go wherever.
It is Bateman. Garth, that means you are going to give your opening statement first.
All right.
Okay, Witney, you want to read our third and final question?
I would. I don't. Oh, there it is. Okay. Here is your third and final question. What city that has never hosted or scheduled to host should have a Schmoedown live event?
No pressure, guys, but you guys better put down Nashville, or else we'll be like smacking y'all.
Hang on a second. I'm gonna look something up on my phone here.
But Garth.
Yes.
Oh, what? Huh? What?
Okay.
Okay. And now I know you initially chose Boston when we chat though earlier. However, that is like pretty much being scheduled as we speak. So we had to omit that answer. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
1 minute on the clock starting now.
All right. So for mine, I chose a unique perspective. I went with Honolulu, Hawaii. Now, one of my reasons I chose this is because Christian has mentioned before he wants to go someplace exotic like Hawaii, somewhere different. Now, a lot of people won't be able to drive there like they would to a local place a couple states away, so it might be more difficult to travel. I understand that. However, a lot of people still have to fly. If you're in Los Angeles, you got to go to New York or Florida, Boston, etc. You still have to fly across country. So there's still a lot of traveling involved for people. But Hawaii, think of the destination, think of the fun. Think of the beautiful locales. Think of where they could film it at a live and beautiful, on a beach.
5, 4,
and
3.
It would be a beautiful
2,
vacation as
1,
long as.
And done with the first opening statement. Okay, moving on to you, Danie. What was your choice for city?
All right, y'all. Whenever you're ready, tell me when I'm ready to go.
Go for it, boo.
All right, so this is my answer shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. My answer is Austin, Texas. Not only is Austin, Texas centrally located inside of the states, it allows for, and not very far from California at all. It's a wonderful city. It's a gorgeous location. If you plan the timing right, you can also have a wonderful vacation there as well. There are plenty of things to do in Austin. There's plenty of events that go on. You can also time it just right with South by Southwest, because South by Southwest has grown the way that it has. There's a lot of comedy shows there. So big chance for comedians to come in and do their thing. And also you can kind of push it to a broader audience, because what if we could get the Schmoedown onto a segment for South by Southwest? And that would just expand the audience even more. Great food, wonderful place. It's Texas. It's perfect.
5, 4, omitting?
No, you can gain a whole bunch of points because
1 and done. We have two very different approaches when it looks at their answers. Chance, Witney, What do you
Well,
think of your selection so far?
I think you guys both made an excellent point in that if I'm going to either Hawaii or Austin, then I'm going to be having a really great vacation. And I think a lot of the players would certainly like that. We'd love to be flown out to some exotic location where we can just sort of hang out and have a nice few days in addition to playing in a really big match. Where would I rather go? I mean, Austin's hip as fuck, but Hawaii is awesome. So it's from that perspective, it's difficult to choose. However, one of you made a really excellent point that I'll get to later.
Absolutely. Vacay on both sides. I would be excited to go to either one of them. Chance, what would you do?
These are. I would love to Schmoedown in either of these places. Real quick, Garth, I wrote Honolulu with an H. Does that count as a correct answer? Or, do I have to write or with an A instead of an O? Is that a correct answer?
There are 2 O's and 2 U's, no A's.
Ah, well, damn. Okay, well, I guess that's incorrect. Yeah, these are 2 very solid locations. I'm curious to see. Yeah, you're gonna one use unknowingly playing to the judge on this case. I'm not gonna tell you who, but you're gonna have to sell me on why this would be a good location for both fans and the show. Whoever can do that is gonna win the point for me.
Danie, I know you really mentioned, you also a little bit of painted the picture a little bit about the idea of potentially doing it at South by Southwest, with comedy shows and everything there. And that's a huge following that they have going on. So painting the picture. So Garth, by extension, I would love for you to kind of paint the picture a little bit to kind of show us what would that event be like? Why would that be an event that would be amazing there more than anywhere else, that no other city in the US can make it as special, there in Honolulu. Okay. So you guys have 4 minutes to openly debate to the death. Let's go.
All right. First of all, what are live events for? Who are live events for? The fans. The live events are for the fans. Is Hawaii a beautiful place for these wonderful competitors to go to? 100%. Would the visual be nice? Absolutely. Can I afford to go to Hawaii? No, I can't. And maybe a lot of other fans can as well. So having a location that's so far away for fans is a big deal. And going into Austin, Texas, where it's pretty central, plenty of people from Texas can drive. Arizona can drive. Anyone on this side of the country can drive. Anyone up north can fly right down. Everyone can have a good time. It's a fan thing. It's a fan event. It's for that.
You're talking about it's for fans and how it's a little easier to get to for states around it. And I understand that. However, for people like me in the Boston area, no, I still got to fly out there. I'm not driving to Texas. That ain't happening. I'm not.
You could potentially, and you can't if it's in Hawaii. At least there are those 2 options. If for whatever reason you can't get into a plane ticket, or it's a last minute sort of thing. Also, with it being in Austin, such a vibrant place, if an event pops up and it's not sold out, there are so many people there that would want to just walk in and see it, and it would allow the Schmoedown to be introduced to so many more people.
You say it's for the fans, right? And so I'm thinking about the big gatherings you guys have and at live events and outside of the Schmoedown. Besides the event, you have big gatherings, you get together, you go to clubs, you go to whatever, and you're mentioning that with South by Southwest and things to do there. Same thing with Hawaii. You can, go to the beach, go surfing. You can go to a nice dormant volcano and go for a hike. There, you can.
Have you been to Texas? It is a volcano over here. All right.
Yeah.
It's Texas. You got all the weather, all of that good stuff. There's beautiful lakes. So I understand that it's not on a beach in Hawaii, but my whole point to this argument is that it allows more people to come to the show. These live events are for fans. So to have that come in with the people, bring people off of the street into the Schmoedown, allow for a wider audience to be attracted to the Schmoedown is why Austin, Texas is one of the best places for the Schmoedown live event.
And I'm saying travel-wise, you still have restrictions to people like me or people in other places.
You can only fly to Hawaii.
Huh?
You can only fly to Hawaii. At least in Texas, you can drive or fly.
I do kind of want you guys to expand a little bit. Now Christian and like a lot of people have mentioned that, financials are a really big part of it. We want to have like free for all, for example, in Miami, but you would have to fly like 50 people down to Miami and house them and everything and feed them, all that good stuff. And being in Honolulu, can you kind of address that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I know, as we said, travel and stuff is restricted, but they already have things planned for Florida, Georgia. They've done New York many times. They're going to Boston. So going from LA to the East Coast versus LA to Hawaii, not that different. Not when it comes to flying and traveling across country. Now Texas is a little
pretty expensive to send a good amount of people from the competitor wise to Hawaii as opposed to sending them to Texas.
Right, but I'm saying it's just as cost prohibitive to places they've already planned.
But at least in Texas, you can get those secret surprises. I'm sure that you could do the same thing with California, but it allows more opportunity to get people to come into surprises for showings for competitors.
And I think there's although it's costly,
and
more
done.
Work
okay. This is going to be our final closing statements of the match, of the Schmoebates. Holy cannoli, Chance, Witney. I know going into this, either one, you guys would love to play at either one of these places. Kind of going into it, understanding a little bit more behind the scenes stuff, like chatting with some people in the crew and everything. What do you think of their points, their arguments? Starting with you, Chance.
With me? Yeah, no problem. I think they're very good pitches for their place. I think one's going to be an a bigger headache, and I can't probably figure out which one. I would want to fact check on the amount of time I take to fly to New York or fly to Orlando from LA, that as opposed to the time I take to LA to Hawaii, because I'm like fairly positive that's not like remotely close. But I haven't been to Hawaii in a while, so I can't do that. Something I would want in their closing, I would want their ideal card for both these locations.
Great question.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I have a question. And this is something you guys touched on, but how are you getting there? Like if you're planning a trip to your chosen location, I would like a little bit more of a little bit more explicit itinerary in your minds. How are you actually putting that together? Like the actual logistics of what you're doing.
Okay. So so our judges are asking you guys to kind of give us, what the actual matches would look like. Would it be a exhibition match? Would it be a belt match? Would it be a number one competitors match? What league it would be, etc. But also alternatively, what would that itinerary look like? What would it look like? What would Christian give and Ellis give to each of the competitors and everyone involved? What would their itinerary look like getting to the hotel and all that good stuff? Okay. Starting with you, Garloff. Almost said Garloff. It's not a name.
Garloff.
Garloff.
Trying to say Garloff.
Garloff. That's gonna be the new nickname for sure. Okay, so Garth, you got 60 seconds to give us your closing statements and address these questions. Go.
First, regarding the travel itinerary and how to travel and all that. Obviously, like Danie pointed out properly, you can't drive to Hawaii. Yes. And as Chance questioned about the travel and flight time, I didn't do research on this, and I'm sorry I didn't. That how many hours it takes to fly from LA to Florida versus LA to Hawaii, but on a map, it's I'm not sure the travel time, but I know that it's tough to get to Hawaii, but I think people can plan vacations around it. They can do. Like I can go see the Schmoedown and stay in Hawaii for a week and have a real nice vacation. And there, as regarding the players there's Paul Oyama is already there, and I'd love to see an Oyama versus Murrow match in Hawaii. And as I said, we can go exotic with the locale and do the live on a beach.
And done. Okay. So, I mean, it sounded like overall, like you said, it would not just be the actual match itself, but everyone going to these matches, Garth, they would be going to make it a whole experience, essentially.
Correct.
It would be a whole trip. It wouldn't be, it might not be for, the regular Joe Schmo that's like going there for the night. That's
Correct.
hopping on a bus and hopping off, right?
Yeah, I think it would attract people who might want to just go and have a fun time, and then the Schmoedown is part of that fun time, and I'm sure if you look into it, there probably are fans who are in Hawaii, and also there are people in places like New Zealand, and it's actually easier for them to get from New Zealand to Hawaii than from New Zealand to Texas.
You're not allowed to do that in your judgments because that wasn't during his time.
That's true.
That is
very true.
I got to strike the record because that was not part of your time.
Definitely not part of the time. All right, Danie, please address those questions, how to get there, the itinerary, all that good stuff. But also, what would the matches look like themselves? What would this live match, how amazing it would be? You got 60 seconds starting now.
All right, so it definitely is easier to get, in my opinion, to get from LA to Texas. So, and budget-wise, because you can have multiple competitors do that. They talked about doing free-for-all in Miami. What about doing it in Texas? So you're allowed to have way more competitors come into the event. You can definitely schedule it around big things that happen inside of Austin. Like I said, it's centrally located, so it just makes it a little bit easier to travel into it because it comes from everywhere. So even competitors who are not inside of California can still come down to Texas. Anyone in Chicago, there are people in Arizona that are right there. So being able to have that luxury of being so close is good. So an ideal card for it, honestly, could be a free-for-all event, could be a big major event like that, and getting there. Super easy, and it's a wonderful spot. You get great barbecue.
One and done. I really want to give you the extra time, Dollface, but I can't because I'm trying to be completely neutral here. All right. Okay. So again, we have two very different approaches on how these live events would look to both the fans and for the competitors and everyone involved. I mean, where would you rather go? Coming from the point of view of competitor and as a fan, which one do you feel like would be the better event to go to attend? Starting with you, Witney.
Garth, you make an excellent point in that Hawaii is a great place to visit. You can shape a whole vacation around it. Mm-hmm. And I think something you kind of brushed past a little bit, but I think is a good point, is the shooting locations for a Schmoedown event would be really interesting in Hawaii because they have a lot of interesting outdoor locales that could possibly be utilized. I'd be interested to see what people would look like in their Hawaiian shirts. Now, personally, I compete in a suit, and Hawaii would be hell because Hawaii is warm and rainy. It rains all the time in Hawaii. It's actually
there's short sleeve button downs and short sleeve suit pants. I mean,
yeah. If you're a douche waffle, I'm not going to do that.
I'm sorry. Can I get that in the quote? Witney Seibold says douche waffle.
Can I use that nickname in the fan leagues?
Sure, it's fine. Witney douche waffle Seibold. Something, however, you're not taking into consideration is what a logistical nightmare it is to plan something in Hawaii. Anybody who's had a destination wedding in Hawaii knows that it's a nightmare. Also, you'd be running into every single bloody destination wedding that America is hosting at that time because that's what's happening every single day in Hawaii. I took my honeymoon in Maui, and this was around Halloween time, and not a day went by that we didn't actually bump into like some sort of wedding ceremony that was going on the island of Maui. So I also, while you guys were arguing, and I apologize for this, I hope you'll forgive me, I looked up airfare to Hawaii and to Austin from Los Angeles. A round trip flight to Hawaii nonstop from Los Angeles and I looked up early April for both of these, was $600. A round trip flight to Austin, however, is $150.
For real?
For real. This was on United. Now, Danie, your point was anybody can come to Austin, and to a degree that's true. You said people from LA can just drive to Austin. No, we can't. That's like a 4-day drive. It actually takes a long time.
Realistically, that's true.
Yeah, to drive. If you're going to stop and do breaks and stay the night, it's going to take a couple days to get to Austin. It's not just
I can drive from Boston.
like driving to from LA to San Francisco. You can do that in like 5 or 6 hours. LA to Austin is kind of difficult. Danie, you actually brought up quite a bad point to host around South by Southwest. Very exciting festival time. There's a lot of people in Austin for it. It's also a clusterfuck, not to put too fine a point on it. Adding another event to South by Southwest at a time when you already can't get a hotel room and already can't get around town and already can't get into the festivals you want to get into is just adding too much chaos to the plot. That said, Austin is an awesome location for not South by Southwest time. Maybe wait until a week or two after South by Southwest, or wait until the festival is winding down a little bit. Maybe on the final day of the event, that's when maybe not the final day because that's when they have the big, but maybe a little bit before or a little bit after, trying to put a little bit of space in between yourself and South by Southwest would be a wise time to set a Schmoedown event in Austin specifically.
Well, I mean, it seems like you kind of made up your mind a little bit.
Talking myself through that, but yeah.
Well, so getting that verbal confirmation, who do you think should win this argument for this third and final question?
I gotta hand it to Danie this time around. I think it's a better idea, and I think she made some interesting points. Just stay the hell away from South by.
Yeah. South by Southwest would be like going to Edinburgh during the Fringe Festival.
Yeah, or you want to host it if you want to host a Schmoedown event during Burning Man. It's like you're there for other reasons.
Yeah.
That's very true. Definitely points awarded over to Danie. Congratulations on getting Witney's vote. And Chance, what did you think of the matches that they would kind of go on, the itinerary that they would put together? What did you think of Garth and Danie's picks?
Something Garloff could have brought up is, I don't know, do you follow NFL at all?
Me personally?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay. Well, Hawaii is the spot where Pro Bowl takes place. Something I think could help sway me to your side is you could have brought up like an all-star match and like just do like some like crazy match combination just for Hawaii, and it could have been cool. But that's not what's gonna sway me. What is gonna sway me? You brought up the fact that Harloff wants to go somewhere exotic. You brought up about to fly regardless of the location, so it doesn't really make a difference. Danie brought up that makes a huge difference because a good chunk of fans can't afford to fly to Hawaii. She also brought up that there's more travel options to a lot of competitors. I do take issue with the whole people from Arizona can drive. No, we can't. I'm a Texas native as well as you, so I know how labor-intensive drives in Texas are.
I think I'm just used to 7-hour drives. Like it's just normal for me.
I know, like it's the norm for us.
In Boston, forget about it. I'm flying. I ain't driving.
I think I'd rather go to Honolulu, but based on the argument, I think Danie sold her city more than it's central. It's a wonderful city. She brought a barbecue, which is nice. And my mother's also an Austin native. It's not why I'm voting for this. But I gotta go with Austin. Danie gets the point.
All right.
Okay. So in that case, I just want to say Hawaii is some bomb-ass barbecue as well. I mean,
I could have brought up.
You should have brought it up. You didn't bring it up. You didn't
the whole pig and having
that food, a Schmoedown themed luau. I'd pay like $500 for that ticket. I would spend all my money on it.
Yeah, Schmoedown luau on the beach.
That's true. On the beach, we could have dancers and everything. It would be a blast.
Well,
Okay,
I just missed it, so sad face.
well, in that case, and your winner, Action General Danie Ramirez. See, now
Well
you
done.
get to officially stay in C2A, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to stay a part of this podcast.
It's not like you host a show or anything, like no big deal. Oh, I was like, and Garth. That's gonna be such
Gareth,
a helpful.
I'm gonna have like 10 different names at the end of it.
With any luck, that's for sure. Well, specifically with yours, like, how did you feel about, actually going into the, I mean, like, how do you feel now that you completed your first match? How do you feel about it? Do you feel like, when you're answering questions or anything, like, no pressure, you had some, like, amazing competitors here? How did you feel about, like, kind of going into these arguments?
I felt the time restriction was the tough part because I did have a lot more points to bring up during all my arguments. I had written down details of like all the matches and stuff, and it's like, oh, you got 1 minute, so it's tough to cram, Chance would say, oh, if you had only brought up and I'm like, yeah, but I had 1 minute. And then after I chose Honolulu, Hawaii, I did think about the travel restrictions and how for me, I don't get to events as much in Los Angeles because Boston to Los Angeles is prohibitive. So I'm like, well, if I'm already paying hundreds of dollars to go somewhere, I'd love to go Hawaii. And so that was my thinking on that, but I could have gone somewhere like Nashville or New Orleans or something like that.
Ooh, Schmoedown, New Orleans would be badass.
Yeah, so maybe I had a little better chance with something like that.
Well, if destination there's they were doing this for a while. They were proposing to host the Oscars halfway between a little tiny city in Oklahoma that was exactly the halfway point between New York and LA. Just because New York and LA, those were the big cities. They were debating, should it be New York, should it be LA? All the other cities were saying, hey, WTF, man, why not here? And so I think it was called Milford, Oklahoma.
Sure.
Which
Are you
doesn't
seriously Milford?
I think it's called Milford. Let me look that up. It was.
I used to live in Enid, Oklahoma. Milford was like an hour away from me.
Which was not Milford. It's Milfay. Milfay, Oklahoma is the name of it. And Oklahoma, like, it doesn't even have a governor. It's this tiny little nothing duchy in the middle of the country. I think it would be fun to flood this nothing town with nothing but Schmoedown fans.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Buy out all of the local hotels and all of the B&Bs and all of the campgrounds and wherever people need to stay, and rent out like their one arena, or just go out into a field somewhere. Just do it out there. That would be an appealing idea to me. But I also have very bad ideas, so maybe that's.
I would also
Schmoedown, Oklahoma.
It'd be like your own version of Woodstock. I mean, come on.
I would also. Another idea I had is there's like a little independent. There's an independent nation within the U.S. called Molossia. It's in Nevada. Like we just like take over that nation.
We'd have to make sure our passports were in order, though.
That is true. Make sure we have passports. All our paperwork.
Yeah.
Schmoedown is turning
literal army
every day.
All my money. Let me just to all these ideas, all of them.
Everyone in sure.
This is also your Schmoebates debut as well, and you are they say you are a winner today. So how does it feel to walk away from your first argument as a winner?
Fun. I love Schmoebates very much because the whole point of this is to argue. So were my answers right? Maybe not. Absolutely not. But the whole point is to argue against it. And I told like everything that you all said against to why some of my points were wrong are absolutely right. It's not anything that I fully endorse or agree with. But it's the whole point of this thing is to have fun and debate with each other and just argue against it. So I think that's one of my favorite parts about it is to just have the chance to argue even though I might be wrong in a situation. That's being
part of the fandom as it is, we always argue with each other already.
Okay.
I mean, between the different fan groups online and social media posts. I mean, like the other day, we accidentally like jumbled onto who should be on the Mount Rushmore of Schmoedown, and we went into like a 20-30 minute argument right there, open debate, and we were just like we have all had different definitions.
My favorite part of that was someone had
arguments. Yeah, well, you're totally right, Garth. Time constraints are an important part to really be able to concentrate it really effectively, and be able to verbalize it and really answer those questions. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much. That wraps up today's Schmoebates. Congratulations, Danie. Thank you, Garth, Witney, and Chance. You guys are amazing and rock stars. Thank you so much for being here. Now, before we wrap things up, Chance, where can we find you? Kind of stay up to date with everything you're doing.
Oh, lots of places. Twitter, Instagram at ChanceWars_91. Check out my main podcast, Notorious by Chance. We do that every week. We just uploaded an episode on Whiplash, which if you want to go check that out, you can do that. We got our next one coming up. I don't know what we're reviewing. It's either going to be He Got Game or White Man Can't Jump. I don't know which one.
Love those.
Yeah, we got to see which one wins our poll. So also
He Got Game.
Jesus.
I'd be fine with either, but
I already voted.
Mom and Dad, let's have the Holy Ghost.
you guys check out my other podcast, PWCA, the podcast of the cool acronym if you're a Phineas and Ferb fan, and also then Notorious by Chance YouTube channel. We're gonna get back to making videos very soon, and check out Schmoedown and the Patreon. Tickets free for all three. I believe just one on sale. So
yes, they did.
Yeah, go buy this.
It's going to be so amazing, and no doubt you're going to knock it out of the park when you do participate. It's going to be so much fun.
Yes.
And back to you, Witney. Where can we stay up today with everything you're doing with Schmoedown, with Critically Acclaimed, and beyond?
Golly, so much. Well, William and I practically live at William Bibiani's apartment. He and I have multiple podcasts together. You can listen to Critically Acclaimed and Canceled Too Soon. We also have a Patreon. Patreon.com/critically acclaimed network, where we have just all of our shows, and when you subscribe you get more and more and more. You can find me on Twitter as usual and all of the social medias. I'm usually at Witney Seibold, which is my name. It's unique enough. I just authored yet another audio drama which I'm selling, so just contact me through any of the social medias and I can sell one to you. I can email you a copy.
Nice.
Absolutely. I gotta ask, did you ever do an episode on your Star Trek podcast over Please Stand By the movie?
That might be something like kind of ancillary for Star Trek. Yeah. We're just doing episode by episode on Star Trek now.
I remember messaging, I can't remember if it was you or Bibbs that I did, because I saw over the summer, I saw Please Stand By for the first time, and I was like, I just want to see them react to this. Like she's like a woman that's like she's like on the spectrum and she's obsessed with Star Trek. That's like her thing. And there's like a whole like fans submit a script kind of situation. Anyway, it's wonderful. If you ever, please go see it. It's amazing. Yeah, Dakota's painting's fantastic.
We've debated that, like how canonical we want to stay, or if we're going to do like some sort of these side projects. Because there's actually a lot of fan-based documentaries and films and just Star Trek films. People went back and did, I think it's called New Voyages, where they actually got like original Star Trek cast members like George Takei and Walter Koenig to come by and reprise their roles. So I'm not sure how canonical that even counts as, or if we're going to do any of like the audio dramas or any of the books. All of that is all still up for debate. For the time being, we're going to stick with canonical episodes. But if we get enough demand, we'll totally do one of these off to the side. Star Trek.
Absolutely. The sky's the limit for sure when it comes to all those podcasts, especially when it comes to the Star Trek one. All right. And Danie, last but certainly not least, where can we find you, boo?
Well, y'all know where to find me. You can find me on Twitter at DanieJoy, DanieEjoy. You can also find me here on the Call to Action Network. Every Monday, me and my favorite co-host, Mr. Paul Denuzio, host the show Chill to Action, where we interview Schmoedown players, where Chance has been on before, and we'd love to get Witney on it sometime. So please come and check us out. Like, comment, subscribe on everything on this channel. Thank you so much, Alex, for letting me be on Schmoebates. I'm super happy that this time worked out because I work every Wednesday night. So unfortunately, I'm never able to be a part of Schmoebates. So I was super pumped to have the opportunity today.
Well, you have anything you have to thank Witney, because he was like, I can only do mornings. And I was like, I will make it work. I will make it work.
I do have a young child, and scheduling is an issue.
Children, they're not important. Whatever. Whatever. What are children? I am Alex Mack, known as Mac Daddy, here on the part of the C2A crew. Call to action. I personally run the Call to Action Twitter page, so Twitter handle, whatever it is. So I like to post funny GIFs, and I like to make little quips here and there. So I'm a funny person every once in a while. So you can please follow me there. I really appreciate it.
I get to see where I
I think Garth's what to say.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Last but not least,
Sorry.
I'm like, well, I guess I'm worse than Lee.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm such a bad host. I apologize.
All right. Okay, mine's fairly simple because I don't host podcasts and things like that. For me, it's just Garth McMurray on Facebook and Twitter, and Garth_McMurray on Instagram. And you can find lots of my comic art and stuff posted there. And also, if you're a fan of the fan leagues, I'm popping up in 4 different fan leagues. I got matches, so
You are everywhere, Garth.
true.
You admin for like fan groups, and your art is like so awesome. I love the one you did for Tony Hild as well, with the James Bond themed one.
And I do live streams with Video Drew, but they're set to private, they're only for patrons. So
for sure, yeah, that's very true, very true. Her page, her when she does streams are really fun. All right, again, awesome. Well, thank you again. Please check us out. Please like and subscribe to this video. We really appreciate it. And Schmoebates, as you know, if you actually want to participate, I have been DM'd before regarding how to be on it, how to compete, how to judge, all that good stuff. Please check us out on Twitter or Facebook, on our Facebook page, because we do a lot of interaction in there. And when we need competitors, whatever it may be, we let you guys know on there. So definitely check us out. All right. Well, thank you again to everyone involved, and congratulations, Danie. And we'll see y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye. Au revoir.